All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Mark of Balance. My name is Mark, and after doing my 2022 Star Wars Year in Review, talking about all the best moments and all of the the lows of 2022 in Star Wars, I want to also look ahead to 2023 and talk about the pretty incredible slate we have for the next year when it comes to Star Wars content, from TV to video games to books to possibly movie trailers slash news, which, movies are always up in the air at this point with Disney Star Wars, but I do want to talk about everything and kind of give my overall feelings towards the specific content that we're getting, maybe predictions, and what I'm hoping to get out of this. So I'm kind of going to go in release order and just talk about it based on the information we have, because some of these things we still have a pretty vague synopsis, but apparently they're coming out next year. So definitely want to highlight what we know so far. And yeah, this will be really fun. I think it'll be a quicker episode because some of these things we don't have a lot of information on. But at the same time, I always say that and then I end up ranting or going off on a tangent for a couple minutes. So yeah, we'll just jump right into it. And at the time of recording, I think Bad Batch Season 2 is about a week away. I did an episode a couple weeks ago talking about the latest Bad Batch trailer, and most of my thoughts are in there, but if I had to sum them all up here, it would be that with Bad Batch Season 1, I think there was a lot of wasted potential. I thought Echo wasn't as much of a character as he should have been. He has a really cool backstory. He has all this trauma, and he has a pretty interesting perspective on the galaxy and how it's changing. So I feel like he should be more front and center in this season. I hope that one-track characters like Wrecker and Tech have a little bit more roundness to them. I hope they are able to break the mold of the tropes that they kind of occupy as the big, strong, silly guy and the antisocial tech expert. So I really hope that they start to expand as characters, and I'm excited to see where Omega goes. I really started to enjoy her character as Season 1 went on. And I'm excited to see her a little bit more grown up, probably a little bit more independent, and a little less, oh, where's Omega? Where did Omega run away to? So that'll be cool to see her have that experience. And what I'm most looking forward to this season is continuing to dive into the clones and how this galaxy is changing around them. We saw Cody in the trailer. It seems like he's not going to be a bad guy. He's just going to be someone that's following orders, thinks he's doing the right thing, as he's always been. And unfortunately, maybe that realization that following orders isn't always the right thing, something that Captain Rex had to learn about in Clone Wars, and now we might see the same arc for Cody. Crosshair, again, one of the stronger parts of Season 1. It seems like he's still going down that dark path, so interested to see how they work that in. And we did see a little bit of Palpatine in the trailer, so maybe we get a small, tasteful amount of Palpatine content. But overall, I think Bad Batch Season 2 needs to focus up the story, cut out the filler and Monster of the Week episodes, and really dive into these characters, expand them, and really lean into what makes this time period so interesting. It's the tone. Really lean into that dark tone that this time period between 3 and 4 is, the rise of the Empire, the basically disposal of millions of life forms with the clones, and the trauma that entails. So I hope that Season 1 was a stepping stone. Everything's been established, and they can really dive in with Season 2, one-up themselves, and kind of follow the trend of all the other Star Wars animated shows that as the seasons go on, they get better and better. So high hopes for Season 2 to kind of correct all of those issues that we had in Season 1. Next on the list is Mando Season 3, obviously the huge flagship Star Wars Disney show that started out all of this Disney Plus stuff and all of these spin-offs that have been coming out around characters. And of course, very excited for Mando Season 3. Mandalore is going to be the center of it. Mandalore has been such an interesting addition to canon ever since Dave Filoni really started to dive into the history and the culture around Mandalore through Clone Wars, Rebels, and now again in Mandalorian Season 3. So very excited to explore Mandalore, in live action. The struggle for the Darksaber between Bo-Katan and Din, I think that'll be really interesting. I'm a little scared with Bo-Katan because I feel like she's been that bad guy, and then she had her little redemption arc in Clone Wars and Rebels, and now it seems like they're making her the bad guy again because there's this struggle for the Darksaber. But hopefully they do it well. I trust them. I like what they did with Bo-Katan in the show so far, so excited to see where that goes. Of course, I'm a little bummed that Grogu and Mando are already back together. That happened in Book of Boba Fett, which again is the biggest blunder that Disney has done with Star Wars, other than not planning out the sequel trilogy. But it's great to have them back together. I wish they had a little bit more time to breathe on their own. I wish that it didn't happen not in their show, because now fans of Mandalorian who only watch Mandalorian will be a bit confused. It'll be interesting to see if they do a flashback or some sort of catch up for those people to be like, oh, okay, Mando and Grogu are together again, and Mando has this cool Naboo starfighter. So that'll be interesting to see. And I know there's been a lot of rumors around cameos and big surprises in this season, so I fully expect to see some very big familiar faces, whether that's using the deepfake face animation stuff to bring in one of the legacy characters that's still around, or if that just means, bringing in Clone Wars characters, deep cuts like that. Again, I'm not a huge cameo person, as long as it's feeding the story, which I think for the most part Mando has been doing well with, but I don't want them to fall into that trap. But I think Mando has kind of solidified itself. I think it's very confident in the story it wants to tell at this point, now that they've kind of got the setup for spin-offs done from season 2. And I hope Bill Burr returns as Mayfield, because he is probably my favorite character in Mando outside of Mando and Grogu. So excited to see what they do. And this is the biggest show on Earth. Honestly, one of the biggest shows on Earth. So it's cool to see Star Wars have that kind of impact again with TV, at least. So excited to see where season 3 goes. Love Mandalore, and maybe we'll see some Sabine. Maybe, I don't know. Next up, we have the release of Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Talked about it in my last episode or 2 episodes ago. Really excited from what the gameplay we've seen so far. There's been a lot of improvements. I know it's been confirmed that there will be a bunch of different lightsaber combat styles, which was something I really, really wanted coming out of the first game. I wanted to be able to really dive into having 2 lightsabers, or the double-bladed, or the single-bladed, or a blade and a pistol. So really tailoring the gameplay to your playstyle, and it seems like that's been confirmed. I think the biggest thing I'm looking forward to, other than all the combat improvements, is the story, because the story seems so interesting, and it seems like it's continuing to expand the galaxy, which I've always respected the Fallen Order franchise for doing. Not relying on cameos, not relying on everything we already know, but showing that this galaxy is far and wide, and there are a lot of factions also working in the shadows. It's not just the Empire, it's these other little pieces, like this guy who was in a cryo chamber who's now, or back to tank, sorry, and is now trying to hunt Cal, don't know why, and his whole group themselves, they look like they've kind of been raiding old Jedi temples, because the one has a lightsaber, the one looks like he's dealt with Jedi before, so it's just very interesting to see where this story goes. And as I talked about in my video about the gameplay trailer, it seems like the family has been separated. The Mantis crew is separate. We don't see Grease, we don't see Mirren, and Seer looks like she's off on her own, starting a new Jedi temple with the different archives in that base, which was really cool to see. So Cal, I'm excited to see where his story goes. BD, love you. Can't wait to get more BD content. And yeah, it looks like a much more open world game. I think the new hardware, PS5, Xbox Series S, and Series X are really going to push this game to be much more open world, less linear, and hopefully they correct some of the things that I did not enjoy about the first game, which was around the backtracking gameplay. The customization during exploration wasn't great. The poncho onslaught that we got was not my favorite, but I think they'll improve that customization aspect of the game, which I'm excited about. And yeah, having the animal mounts will be really cool, and I think that just reinforces that these worlds are going to be a lot more open to explore, and I'm excited to see how many worlds will be available. I think in the previous game we had 3 to really explore, but then at the end you go into the Fortress Inquisitorius, terrible name, but that's what it's called. So yeah, a lot to look forward to with this game. Definitely my most anticipated game of the next year. I trust Respawn with my life with the Star Wars story, so I think there is not a lot that could go wrong. So I think it's a safe bet that we'll get a very, very good package when it does come out in March, I believe. So yeah, Jedi Survivor. Next, we have the Ahsoka series. And this series is so interesting for me because, of course, Clone Wars fan since 2008, since sitting in the theater seeing the Clone Wars, Ahsoka is my Luke Skywalker. So having a whole series now dedicated directly to her and her story after Rebels is hopefully going to be something special. Based on rumors, it seems like it's not only going to be happening in the present day, but we're going to be seeing Ahsoka at different ages in live action. So really, really diving into this character that we already know so much about, but I know Dave Filoni has a plan. He created this character. This character is his baby. So, when he does these flashbacks or wherever he goes with this story, it's the story he wants to tell. Whether we like it or not is up to everyone's own opinion. But I think he's going to be telling the story that he wants to tell. And it's going to be in live action. So he's a first-time director of his own series. He's done some directing in Mandalorian, and hopefully he can take those lessons and what he's learned from Jon Favreau and all these other career-long directors and apply it to the show. We know that it's a samurai-style story, which, we love because, the Japanese influences on George Lucas and original Star Wars should be palpable in this. And Dave Filoni's always been a big fan of Studio Ghibli, so maybe some anime-inspired stuff would be really cool to see in a series. And we don't know much about the series, not that I know of from any of the synopsises, but synopses? Oh. But we know from Mandalorian and Ahsoka's appearance in Mandalorian that she is looking for Thrawn, and that means she's also looking for Ezra. My prediction is that Ezra and Thrawn are in the unknown regions, which means the Chiss ascendancy will be in play. Thrawn, his old species and his old navy, basically, is going to be there. I never finished the Thrawn books, the prequel ones about his time in the ascendancy, so I'm not sure where the bad blood ended there. I believe he still has contacts there that do like him, but I know a lot of the ascendancy does not like him, so it'll be interesting if they really lean into the Chiss ascendancy and that species as a whole. And of course, seeing a live action Thrawn would be incredible. I think Rebels unfortunately couldn't make Thrawn as dark and as intense as he is in the books because, one, it was a kid show, and two, he couldn't win. Because he was going up against so many main characters in that show, he couldn't really win or deal any devastating blows. So hopefully with this series, he's able to rise back up to that tactical genius and ruthlessness and apathetic to death and destruction as long as he gets the right results. I hope we get to see that Thrawn in this series, and I'm very excited that Lars Mikkelsen will be playing him. I know, once again, that's a rumor, but his voice in Rebels was just perfection, so I really want to see him reprise his role in live action. Sabine and Ezra, I know Ezra is still up in the air, but Hera and Sabine have been cast. I love what I've seen from them. It seems like the actress that plays Sabine is really passionate about the role after watching Rebels, and it seems like she is very grateful to be a part of the Star Wars galaxy. So I'm excited to see what she does with Sabine. Hera, same thing. It might be the voice actress. I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I didn't bring in a lot of research into this, but I'm just kind of going off the top of my head. But regardless, as it stands, I personally wish this story would have been kept to animation because that's the characters that we got to know. It was through the animation medium and lens. So I would have rather kept that going, especially with how cinematic and how well Rebels was done towards the end of the show. And I feel like they would have upgraded the animation. Now with, the technology around Bad Batch and Clone Wars Season 7, I feel like they could have elevated Rebels to the next level. And in all honesty, Rosario Dawson hasn't earned the role of Ahsoka for me yet. We've only seen her for a couple episodes, and I'm not blaming her for that. I'm just saying we haven't had enough screen time with her as Ahsoka to say, oh, she is just up there with Ashley Eckstein. So I believe she has a very tough task with this series to not only carry the series, but also convince us that this is a continuation of Ashley Eckstein's animated Ahsoka, who is the true Ahsoka. So I'm just saying I'm cautiously optimistic about this series. I love the potential story that it could follow and the characters it could involve. But at the same time, I don't have the same relationship with these characters in live action as I do with them in animation. And I think that hurdle is going to be a little tough for the first couple episodes, unless they really blow it out of the water and Dave Filoni just absolutely nails it, which is possible. It's definitely possible. But this is the story that Dave wanted to tell. He's always mentioned that he wanted to shift to live action with this story, and that there are scenes in this show that he had been thinking about for years and years and years, and finally seeing them in person is like life-changing for him. So I do believe there's going to be a lot of passion. I do believe he has a story to tell here, and if I want to rest my hat on that, then I am very confident that the show will deliver. But I think those first couple episodes, they have a very tough job. So very excited for Ahsoka. I think there's a lot of stuff up in the air, and I'm excited to finally see a trailer for it, because if it's supposed to come out next year, the only trailer that they've shown is from Star Wars Celebration, but that was very exclusive. They only showed it to the people in the room. So not many people have seen it, but we know it's the Ghost crew are going to find Ezra. Thrawn is involved, and I hope it's in the unknown regions. I think that is the perfect way to get out of the Skywalker saga kind of dome of Star Wars, really expand the universe, and explore something we've never seen before. That's what I want. I always want new Star Wars stuff. So let's see what Ahsoka has in store for us, but as of right now, I'll trust Dave Filoni. The next one we have is Skeleton Crew, which, again, we don't know much about. We just know that Jude Law is basically a mentor or the leader of a group of kids that are kind of lost in the galaxy, and that's pretty much it. So I think there's been some rumors around the unknown regions and kind of recontextualizing what the unknown regions are, and I know that kind of sends people off because people love the unknown regions from expanded universe and now in canon, and they don't want to see that changed too much, or they have a vision for it that if it doesn't match up, then that might not be too good. But other than that, I mean, Jude Law, great actor that I think he can easily carry a show. We don't know anything about the child cast, but I think, having a story centered around a group of kids instead of what it's recently been in Star Wars, which is like one kid with a bunch of adults and the adults being the guardians for the one kid. I think it'll be very cool to see a group of children now living and existing in this galaxy and finding their way and kind of leaning on each other. I think that would be really interesting, kind of like a Stranger Things kind of vibe. That's something we haven't really seen in Star Wars, except in some arcs in the Clone Wars itself. So again, I'd love to see a trailer for this because it's supposed to come out next year and we don't have any footage of it. So I'd love to see a little bit more about what this could be about. But as of right now, we don't know much. We know Jude Law, group of kids exploring the galaxy, lost in the galaxy, and that the unknown regions are rumored to be involved. So all I can say is, sure, let's do it. I forget who the showrunner is. I think the showrunner is really good. Oh, I should look it up. I'm going to look it up. John Watts, he directed all of the new Marvel Spider-Man movies. So we know he is very good at that adolescent teen kind of range of characters. He's good at portraying them. I really think the teen cast of the Spider-Man movies are really great, really enjoyable, really well written. So I'm thinking that will elevate this group of children in Skeleton Crew. So that is actually a really big plus for me. I knew it, but confirming that, I think that's really great. I think he is good with working with teen childhood actors. So I think this could work really well. I just realized that Tom Holland and Zendaya were not teens when they did those movies. I think they were probably 19 or 20. I mean, but they play kids. You know what I mean? They play kids, but they're adults because they look. I think it's good. I think this is good. John Watts show running. This is good. So Skeleton Crew, want to see more. Don't know much. That's what I got. And the final show I want to talk about is Visions Season 2. Being a big anime fan, I really looked forward to Visions Season 1, and it blew me away. I think there were some of my favorite Disney Star Wars content within those couple episodes and shorts that they released. I think The Ninth Jedi was fantastic. The Village Bride is, in my opinion, just like a masterpiece in Star Wars storytelling. I absolutely loved the score. I loved the themes. And it was just everything that was great about anime and everything that's great about Star Wars rolled into one. And I did a whole episode just on that 20-minute short because I think it was just so incredible. And there was a bunch of other ones that I really enjoyed within there. And I think that different people enjoyed different ones. And that was the the good thing about Visions because it was so varied and unique in all of its different storytelling pieces. So I am very much looking forward to season 2. I'm excited that they are expanding it outside of just anime in Japan and giving a bunch of different studios the freedom to tell their own stories. I know there was one from South Africa. I think there was a couple European ones. I hope there's some more Japanese ones, probably South Korea as well. I do hope there is a continuation of The Ninth Jedi because the director and studio head of that short did say they had mapped out an entire movie around that storyline. And I think the storyline was very interesting. So I am hoping that they might continue that one, but I think that might be a little optimistic, but who knows? Regardless, I am very excited to see more 2D animated Star Wars in anime form and also in different countries' animation styles. So that'll be really cool. I think that'll be a unique project as much as the first one was. So looking forward to Vision Season 2. Next, we have more Phase 2 High Republic books. I think the next mainline book comes out sometime in the spring. I know the first one was called Convergence. I think the next one is going to be Battle of Jedha, and Cataclysm, I think is the next one. So cool names, should be exciting. I think the first 2 books really set the stage for a lot of intrigue around the Mother and the Path of the Open Hand and the Nameless, these creatures that feed on Force users, and that the Open Hand and the Mother are trying to balance the Force and make sure that no one has control over the Force. These Force users, Jedi, they use the Force, and to them, they think that is hurting the Force because they're taking the Force and using it for themselves. So they think these creatures are the great equalizer. They can destroy all of the Force users so that the Force can be free. And obviously the Mother has some other motivations because we know that every cult leader is in it for themselves. They're really not what they say they are all about. So that's still the very big, intriguing part of it. So excited to see how they continue to work her into the story. As for the Jedi and the galaxy at this point, they're still establishing, the Outer Rim and how it's kind of wild space, and the Republic really want to bring in the Outer Rim into the Republic. And they're using, Jedi, Wayfinders, all that stuff. Wayseekers, sorry, that's Jedi that explore and just follow the Force. So we don't know much about that. So continuing to kind of feel out the different factions of this galaxy is going to be really cool. We have, aside from cults like the Path of the Open Hand and the Jedi, there's some other Force factions. I forget what they're called, but it seems like there are different ways to view the Force. It's not so kind of black and white. It's not just like Jedi Sith. There's a bunch of different types of outlooks on the Force, which I think is cool and hope they continue to expand upon. Other than that, we just need to keep finding out more about how the Nihil kind of come into existence based on the paths and the Mother. Obviously, they're very much connected, the Mother and what the Nihil eventually become. So yeah, just continue to build out that intrigue around the High Republic galaxy. I know probably not many of my listeners are reading the books, but I can't stress how great the High Republic is. I think Phase 1 was much stronger than what Phase 2 is doing right now, but I think Phase 2 has a tough job following up Phase 1. So I would recommend starting with Phase 1. I think they're absolutely fantastic. And definitely reach out if you have any questions, because there's a lot of books and comics and stuff. And if you need help, I would be happy to kind of tell you the order to read them in and kind of what it's about. So, yeah, just wanted to talk about Phase 2 and the High Republic because I don't think books are talked about enough. So I wanted to give them the spotlight here. So those are all the confirmed things that we have coming out in 2023 between books, video games, and TV shows. Movies are still just really up in the air with Disney. We never know what Star Wars movies are coming out, which are in development, which are getting canceled in the next week. But we know that Patty Jenkins' movie is still apparently in development, Rogue Squadron. I hope that Rogue Squadron isn't set between 3 and 4, even though that's kind of what it's based on. I think that area is really saturated right now. Not in a bad way, because I think Andor is fantastic, and I think Bad Batch is kind of working its way up. But I'm very curious to see how they would be able to expand the galaxy within that region, because we've seen pilots before. We've seen the Death Star blown up. We've seen the Death Star 2 blown up by these different squadrons. So I'm very curious to see what type of story they would tell there. I don't think it would be bad. I think it would be interesting to have that everyday life of a combat pilot in Star Wars, and maybe how they grow up and then join the rebellion, and maybe there's an interesting intimate story there. But for me, I hope they might follow the Alphabet Squadron books, and this squadron that comes together after the fall of the Empire, and they hunt down the remaining remnants of the Empire, because I think outside of the video games and some of the books, we don't really know much about the time between episode 6 and 7. And I think this would be really cool for fans that are much more casual and don't want to dive into video games or books. And this would be their kind of entry into what happens between that time period. And I feel like they can explore that if that's the one they jump into. But again, we never know with movies. I know the Taika Waititi movie is still in development after Thor: Love and Thunder. I'm not very excited for that, but no, I'm kidding. Taika Waititi, I think, could do something very cool with Star Wars. He did a great job with The Mandalorian and his episodes he directed there. So I think he can do a very quirky and new, fresh idea for Star Wars. But that movie's just in development. Don't know anything else about it. We know there's a movie set after episode 9 that's in development. I believe the showrunner for Miss Marvel and someone else is involved. That one, I think, is like very much the most fast-tracked one. I think that one's the most confirmed to be actually happening. Again, no idea what it's about. We don't know if we're going to go back to Rey and training the next generation of Jedi, because Daisy Ridley was just at Lucasfilm, so maybe she's involved in that way. I'm not really sure what story they could tell with that, because I don't think John Boyega is interested in coming back to Star Wars, and Oscar Isaac, I don't think will, unless there's a big story or a lot of money to get him back involved. So I wouldn't be very cohesive if only Daisy Ridley came back, personally, for me. And I just don't know what story they would tell there. I mean, training the next generation of Jedi, you would have to really change what it means to be a Jedi, because I feel like we've kept hammering away at the same type of Jedi and kind of those little offshoots of it, like Qui-Gon and Ahsoka and a little bit of Mark Hamill in Last Jedi, but really changing our perception of Jedi. What is a Jedi? How attachments can live in harmony with being a Jedi, and just expanding that whole lore around that, I think would be really interesting. But personally, I don't think that was very well set up by the sequel movies. So very, very curious to see what they tell there. If, in my opinion, I really hope they just get out of that whole space and do something at another corner of the galaxy, or something really new, not involved with the First Order or the New Republic, or whatever the Republic is after the First Order now. So I think that would be really cool, but you never know. So I think that's just Disney's way of saying, hey, we made the sequels, we have to legitimize them a little more, so we're going to make movies like this. So I don't know. Cautiously optimistic. We'll see how it goes. There's a bunch of other movies that I think are on the horizon or in development, but I'm just going to leave it at those 3, because I think those are the most confirmed, like the most that are less likely to get canceled. But in all honesty, they're probably likely to maybe get canceled at one point. So you never know. I'll just keep it to those 3, because I think those are the most far along, and I'll just leave it at that. The other thing I'm hoping for in 2023, which I think we definitely will see, is a lot more news around the Acolyte, because that is definitely my most anticipated series. It's been my most anticipated series since they first announced it. It set in the High Republic 100 years before Phantom Menace. It's going to be centering around a Sith character, which is amazing to see them do something new and fresh, but at the same time, it'll be very cool to see how they balance having a Sith main character and how they can still rely on those Star Wars themes without losing them by having this Sith protagonist. But I really like the synopsis. It's about like a old Jedi Knight and her old master getting back together to investigate something, and they realize there's something much darker going on. So I assume that's kind of how this Sith character gets involved, and they basically say that this one Sith character infiltrates the Jedi Order. So I'm assuming we'll be on Coruscant. I'm assuming we're going to see a lot of Old Republic, or High Republic, garb, which is great for a book fan like me who really enjoys the High Republic, to get that kind of day in the spotlight And I know there's a lot of theories out there that, Darth Plagueis might be that impending doom that kind of legitimizes why this series is being made, like that story of Plagueis and how, he eventually rises to power within the shadows and then eventually Palpatine getting involved. Because I think that timeline kind of lines up, 100 years, probably Plagueis, and then Palpatine would come along maybe halfway through that. So, yeah, I'm really excited for the Acolyte. I think it's got a really cool cast. I think some of the set photos leaked, which is unfortunate, but it looks like there's a lot of different types of characters, alien and human, which will be great to see. I know there was a Wookiee, there was a Zobrik, guys with horns on their head, not Darth Maul, but someone else. But yeah, Sith-led story, High Republic, cool cast, and the showrunner or director, forget her name again. I didn't bring notes. I'm so sorry, guys. But she basically said the best quote ever, and she said, "I'm not interested in doing cameos or playing Easter egg. I just want to tell a very interesting and fresh story in this Star Wars galaxy." And that is literally the best thing a director or showrunner could say for me in any sense, because I believe that's what we need in Star Wars. We need fresh, we need new. Andor proved it, even though it was in a familiar time. It was new, it was not connected by cameos and Easter eggs. And I'm getting the same vibes from Acolyte, which I love. Hopefully the production value is on the Andor level and not on the Book of Boba Fett or Obi-Wan level. So very, very excited for that. And I think the last thing I want to talk about is gaming news. I think Respawn, after they release Jedi Fallen Order, or Jedi Survivor, sorry, they will be starting to probably talk about the other two games they have in development. I know they have a first-person shooter in development, and I think a strategy game, which will be really cool if it's kind of like Empire at War. I love those games. Commanding entire armies or fleets in the Star Wars galaxy would be really sweet. I know we still have the Ubisoft open world on the horizon. Again, Ubisoft kind of has fallen into very formulaic game design, so I'm hoping that with Star Wars they get a little bit more creative and try and draw from Elden Ring or some of these new age open worlds and really change their formula up. But open world Star Wars, love it. The next one, Eclipse, what a rocky development cycle that's been, but that is set in the High Republic, and the first trailer for it was unbelievable. One of the best Star Wars trailers we've ever gotten. But there's been a lot of controversy around the studio game director, around sexism in the workplace, and just a lot of bad press for them. So I'm not really sure where that game stands, but apparently it's still in development. Probably won't get it till like 2025, 2026, but maybe we'll get some more news next year, which will be exciting. And then finally, the Knights of the Old Republic remake, again, probably won't come out till 2025, 2026, but maybe some more news on how they're revamping the gameplay for this generation of gaming instead of the turn-based stuff they did back in the early 2000s. But yeah, I've never played Knights of the Old Republic. I tried to. I could not get into the combat, but I know that the story is hailed as one of the best stories in Star Wars, video game, movie, TV, book, anything. So very excited to dive into this when it does come out and I can finally experience it myself and give you guys my thoughts on that. So that's all the gaming news we have for now, but the main show is going to be Jedi Survivor, so excited for that. But hopefully we can really start to revamp Star Wars games, because I think, again, there was a lull from some of the failures with Battlefronts and their launches, and then Squadron was like half a game, but then Fallen Order was fantastic. So I hope Star Wars video games can start churning out some really, really great and unique experiences, because back in the day, we were getting like a Star Wars game a year, and they were pretty great. And now we're getting like one every 2 to 3 years, which is terrible. So, hoping to get a lot more Star Wars video games on the horizon. And that concludes my 2023 Star Wars preview. I think there's a lot to be excited about. I think that Andor has Star Wars content on the upswing. I have a lot of hope for a lot of the TV shows coming out. I think that we went through a little bit of a dark time, a bit of a sophomore slump with Book of Boba Fett, Bad Batch Season 1, and Obi-Wan, but I think we'll be on the upswing here, and maybe we'll finally get a Star Wars movie announcement or something. Who knows anymore? But thank you guys, as always, for listening. Really appreciate it. Excited for another year of Star Wars content, another year of the Star Wars Mark of Balance podcast. Thank you so much for the constant support. Let me know what you're most excited for in the next year. What is that project that you are just so excited to dive into? And let me know on my Instagram at @star_wars_ mark of balance. Love interacting with you guys. Do not be afraid to reach out and talk some Star Wars. So, as always, stay safe, stay healthy, and may the Force. Peace.